I know you've done it. I know you've done it. We've all done it. I mean, we've all read naughty books. Welcome to the Film Threat Podcast. I am Chris Gore. I hope you're having a good day in spite of we live in the year 2020. But what's a great escape? Seeing a good independent film. And if you watch this, listen to this, you know I love documentaries, especially a documentary that goes into great depth about something I really don't know anything about. And Austen Rachlis is the documentary filmmaker behind Naughty Books. And one of the subjects of Naughty Books is here, CJ Roberts. This documentary is such an interesting exploration of the authors that write fiction that is well, let's be honest, it's I don't want to say it's pornography, it's adult fiction, and there is a tremendous fan base for this type of work. Austen, how did you discover this, and then what made you want to go, I'm going to make a documentary about this topic?
So I was working for a literary agency, and one of the agents that I worked with, who subsequently appeared in the film, Rebecca Friedman, she started representing these self-published authors and helping them get traditionally published deals. And she would just start telling me their stories, and some of these women had been in really financial dire straits, struggling to afford groceries, and then made a genuinely life-changing amount of money by publishing these books at very low price points on Amazon. And at the time, this was all coming in the wake of 50 Shades of Grey, but that was such a phenomenon. It had sort of sucked all the attention onto itself. And there hadn't been a lot of mainstream attention on all the other books that had found a market thanks to that book. And I just thought it was a really good story, and it was a classic sort of American dream story with this twist, but it also allowed an opportunity to explore a lot of other ideas, including women and sexuality or changing dynamics in the publishing industry. There was this trunk to it, but it had a lot of branches. And I was like, all right, I think this is an idea for documentary. And then I found out about this convention of these authors that was taking place, and it was 6 months away, and it felt very concrete that I could get a crew together, go to Las Vegas and shoot this convention and go from there. So that's how it started.
Well, I think you're right. It's such a great topic for a doc because it really is that sort of Horatio Alger going for your dream type of story. The women that you feature, the authors that you feature in the film, they go through this, they're doing it out of the passion. Suddenly they see the dollars coming in from these self-published books, which is a huge category on Amazon. And then you see the pressure that comes with now being one of these authors. CJ, as one of the subjects in the film, what is that? And now seeing your journey, or part of your journey, I assume it's still ongoing, in the documentary, what was that like?
Do you mean just the journey itself?
Yeah, just the journey. What was that like? And then being captured and then seeing it in a doc. That's,
Oh, yeah. It was pretty wild. I think, the journey itself was crazy because I was really, for me, it wasn't, I suppose it was some of the financial thing. I think the craziest part for me was, you think you want people to kind of step on this wild side with you. Because I wrote the book and I was like, I obviously enjoyed writing it, and I was like, I wonder what could happen with this, because I was in the military for 10 years, and when I was younger, I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be on Broadway and all this stuff, big theater kid. But my mom was like, you need to be more sensible and keep your feet on the ground type thing. And I joined the military, and I did that for 10 years, and then I went to college and I traveled the world. And when I got out, the craziest part for me was that, here I was, I had a stellar military record, and I had graduated college, I was at the very top of my class, and I just couldn't find a job. I could not find a regular job, you know. And I kind of felt like I left the military because I wanted to jump off and follow my dream. You know, like either you're gonna step out and you're gonna do something that you said you were gonna do and see if you can do it, or you're never gonna do it. And so I went ahead and did that, and then I got a lot of rejections. So it was a huge learning process for me because I thought like I'll write a book and then I will send it to someone and they will be like, yes, I like it, and then they'll put it in the bookstore and that'll be done. And it was not like it. There was so much to learn about publishing, so much to learn about just the industry. And so, like I said, I got rejected a lot. And by the time I published, it was under like, you know, self-publishing, which I said at the time was like Vanity Press, you know. So I wasn't really expecting a whole lot. I was just wanting to share it and see what happened. And then when so much happened, I was shocked and I was overwhelmed and I was really happy. But at the same time, to have that many people, like, you know, looking at you and looking for you, and I was not prepared.
Was it like, I'm curious, like when you get like you're self-published author and, you know, you get a check from Amazon or a direct deposit from Amazon for tens of thousands of dollars. I'm just going to assume because
my first one was for $10.34.
You must have been excited about $10.34.
I was. Oh my God! I showed it to my husband. I was like, ah.
But then to start to get the amounts of money that some of the self-published authors, yourself included, were getting, just became mind-boggling.
Yeah, it was crazy. I dealt with things that I had never dealt with before. Like I didn't realize there was so much I didn't know. Like I'd never seen that amount of money before, and I was like, oh, okay. So what do I do with this? And it was like for the first time I had to be like, maybe I should call somebody to see what I should do with this money, you know, because you know, I mean, obviously, like taxes takes a lot, and like a lot of people have their hands in the pot, you know. So I didn't know anything about managing money. I didn't know anything about that. And if you don't really want most of it to be gone in taxes and stuff like that, you really need to like have somebody do that for you if you don't know anything about it. So that was also something I had to learn.
Well, I don't know. Like I know some people in the documentary mentioned that this could be considered pornography. I'm not exactly sure. I won't be the one to judge. But I do know that like just knowing that business being so huge, my mother actually, odd story, my mother in Detroit, Michigan, she worked for a book company called Harlequin Romances. Mm-hmm. And I just remember she would have them stacked up in a closet. There's all these books and these paintings, very romantic. This is, in a way, would you say that these modern stories are kind of an evolution of those Harlequin romances, maybe taken to the beyond, you know, because those books were always very innocent. They sort of had it where it was a lot of it was very suggested. In this, it goes a bit beyond the suggestion.
Because it's more explicit.
Yes, I would say more explicit. You said the words, I didn't. I'm curious what you both think of that, Austen and
I do think that it's an evolution. I mean, there's still a market for those books, and I think one thing that I think for people who are outside the romance reading community don't realize what a wide array of books are published under the romance umbrella. I do think that thanks in large part to Kindle and other e-reading, the more explicit segment of the market has been allowed to flourish. I think they were always there, but when you need to put them into bookstores and there are covers, then people can see what you're reading, that side of the market is maybe going to be smaller. And that, you know, it says, you say at the end of the movie that a lot of people didn't expect that women would go and buy these books. Well, that's a problem when you're not publishing those books, then there's no books for them to buy. And so once they were out there, you could see that there was a market there. And there, there might have been a market there this entire time. It was just never given the opportunity to reach the marketplace.
It was because you couldn't buy what I wanted to read. So I was like, let me write my own. Although I don't necessarily object to people calling it pornography, because I don't think there's anything, as long as everything is consensual, I don't think there's anything wrong with pornography. But the only thing that I would add when people call it pornography, I don't think you learn anything from pornography. I don't think that it can be, when you read this type of book, I've learned so much just about, just even like language, and like my vocabulary is expanded. The places I go in my mind is expanded. It's almost like essential poetry is how I like to think of it. Like and I've written, I like to read a lot of books, and I will say when I read erotica or romance that is written by a man and that's written by a woman, I can tell the difference. And the difference is that when I read these books that are written by men, they are explicit, just as, but the sex is always detached from the emotion, because men are very visual, and so it's the act itself that is meant to be titillating. When a woman writes a scene, it's the emotion behind the action that is titillating. Same actions, just different motivations. And I think that that's the difference. It's the difference between, when you say pornography, it's the difference between watching like hardcore porn and, a hardcore scene in a movie. It's all contextual.
Right.
I do think that for the most part in these books, though, as CJ was saying, the sex scenes are part of the narrative, that there is an emotion being expressed through those sex scenes. Now, it might be, I'm so attracted to you, I can't keep my hands off you. It might be right. Wow, we just had a really big fight and now we need to make up. But it is tied back to the narrative, as opposed to the point of the books is still an emotional journey, as opposed to, I think, in pornography, obviously the point is the titillation or watching the sex or reading it.
Right. I'm curious because I even asked a friend about this, this whole world I didn't know anything about. What I admire about that you do so well in the documentary, it's not just about the subjects, but their journey and their success. I mean, this is a whole new business that I don't think a lot of people. I admire the entrepreneurship of so many of the women, because they didn't just have these fans, these rabid fans, but you saw sort of what, as a creator, and I think that YouTube creators can relate to this, is this pressure to continue to put out content that actually can weigh on people. You see the convention that you did, you covered that so well. You see the different booths and the fandoms that are around it. Someone told me that there's is it pterodactyl, or dinosaur? Am I wrong? Correct me if I'm wrong. There's novels that involve dinosaurs having sex.
Taken by T-Rex?
Is that one? Taken by
I'm
T-Rex?
pretty sure that's one of them, yeah. No, this is a subgenre. It is. You're not wrong.
Bronchosaurus.
It just goes to show that internet rule. It's just if you think something, it's nope, it exists. But I liked. You could focus on the titillating aspects of the doc, I guess. But the thing that I found fascinating was that this is a viable business, and there are challenges to do. I mean, you saw the amount of money sort of puts a lot of pressure. In talking to your subjects, Austen, what was the thing that you began to notice that a lot of the women who were successes, what they experienced?
I think that yes, there is a lot of pressure, and I think that especially, I think some of it's shifted, but in the early days, they were being sold at a very low price point, and a lot of readers read these books really fast. They might finish a book in a day. So you might have a release day, and then by the end of that day, your readers are like, okay, when's the next one coming out? like, I just published a novel. So now there's this pressure to publish every 3 months, every 4 months, which as a writer, to write a full novel every 3 to 4 months is, I mean, that's all very hard. And so I think either you have to set up expectations for your readers that they're not going to get those books that quickly, or figure out a way to generate that content that quickly. And I think, there's a way that you have to see it as a business, and to create your brand. And I think that's something that gets underappreciated about self-publishing, when people dismiss it, that like when you're self-publishing, you are the CEO of like a one-person company, or sometimes a few more people. And to have to think about so many different aspects. You can't just write the books and have success. You do have to think about that business side, and that's really difficult, and especially depends on why somebody entered the space. I think, CJ, you said when you wrote that first book, it was just for you, and you weren't thinking about it as a business, and all of a sudden you had to shift that gear.
Yeah, I've only ever written nonfiction, and I've only ever worked with small publishers, one big publisher for one book that I did. But I imagine the process is completely different. I will just say, just having written nonfiction, I almost think it's a bit easier in terms of methodically laying it out. So I really admire the subjects in here, how they've got to pour that, like they got to have that creative spark. So I don't know, CJ, if you had any writing tips you wanted to throw out there at all for anyone listening or watching this.
Well, considering it's been a while since I've had another one out, I wouldn't come to me for that. I'm jealous. I'm jealous of people that can do that. I was very grateful because I got my degree in business, right? So I was lucky in that way, because I didn't think, once I started writing, I was like, oh, well, spent all that time getting a business degree, like, what for, But really, I used it. There was so much to do, because you think writing the book is the hard part. That's the 10%. The other 90% is hiring people to do the things you can't do, like the illustrators, the designers, the editors, all of the people that are going to, take your product and make it marketable, and then the market itself, and then, how you're going to time things. There's so many things I did wrong, because I got into it when it was just happening. So it was like, we were like the first babies, like we were just like stumbling through, figuring stuff out. And I did so many things wrong. So I'm glad that I was able to, do my research and stuff like that. But yeah, writing the book is like the easy part, which I never thought I would say.
Oh, that's funny.
Because that's all I want to do. All I want to do is write the book and then leave it and like have someone else. But no, it doesn't work that way. When you're an independent, like Austin said, you are the CEO of your own company, and you would rather be sitting there just writing your little stories, and being creative, because that's what you want. But you can't, because you have to figure out your marketing plan and your, all the things that an artist does not want to do.
Well, I do think that coming from a military background has to help a little bit, because being in the military, what little I know, I have a son who's in the military, that it's all about discipline. It's all about consistency and discipline. And I think that that's the thing that I preach to any of my friends who come to me for advice on how to write a book. I'm just like, I don't know. I spend 6 months on the outline, then I write the book in a month, like it's just, I write about 1,000 to 2,000 words a day. And then in a month, I've got a book. Average book is about 60,000 words. So to me, it's just about being methodical and being disciplined. And if you can
that's definitely part of it.
Yeah, that's it. It's just like, okay, I spent all this time thinking about it, 6 months. Now it's just like get it out and get it on paper. And there's
I love that work ethic though, because I can be too much into my own head. Like my problem is like, because there's a bad side to perfectionism, right?
Yeah, perfliction.
Yeah, when I was writing the first book, yeah, I wrote it myself. I wrote it for myself, and so I didn't care. I would sit there and I would just like write whatever I want, And then once it became like this business thing, then all of a sudden I'm writing for people, and every word you hear, like the background, like, oh, are people going to like that? Is this okay? Is that okay? And then, is this good enough? Did I write something that's going to top my previous work? It's like, for me, I get so much in my own head with that methodicalness that I can like not write it, because I've come all the way full circle to like, why bother?
Well, I also think that is something that you're more at risk of when you are publishing independently, because when you are with a traditional publisher, there is a contract that tells you when you have to turn it in, and there's an editor or multiple editors telling you, this is good enough, we're going to put this out, as opposed to you having to make that call yourself when you're an independent.
Well, it's funny because I will say 90% of those deadlines in the contract publishing world, no one meets them. Just as someone who has I have missed every deadline for every book I've ever written, usually by about a month, but it's just because I want to get it right. I want it to be perfect. And the one thing I do love that is brought up in the doc is that procrastination is part of the process. I feel like procrastination is a big like this is why my place is so neat, organized, and clean. It's because that's what I'm doing when I'm not working on the book. I'm alphabetizing my DVDs or whatever. I'm
You're
doing
busy
stuff.
not writing.
My brain is working on it, but I'm not writing. Yes.
Exactly.
My husband irritates me with that.
Really?
I'll be sitting there, like, let's say that I'm reading a book, right?
Yeah.
And he'll come and and it looks like what I'm doing is laying on the couch and reading a book. But I'm like, no, I'm reading the book, but every few sentences, my imagination is elsewhere. Like, it's there. It's so funny you talk about like process, because like literally behind me, these are all like my little note cards and all my stickies and all my thousands of ideas, and I just pin them on the wall. So there is a process. You just gotta find the one that like works for you, and mine is ridiculously slow.
But I like that there's no wrong process per se. There is a process, like you said, that works for you. Some people are like sticky notes. Me, I'm all about the outline. I like to have an outline in a Google Doc, and then so it's whatever works. Nonfiction being different than fiction, although I imagine some of the processes may come over. But I just love the entrepreneurship that was displayed in this, and just the doc really just. I think it's really, at the end of the day, it's inspirational. It makes me want to seek out some of these books. Taken by the T-Rex. Maybe I'll start in that rabbit hole. But Austen Rachlis, CJ Roberts, thank you so much for joining us on the Film Threat Podcast. The Naughty Books documentary is available now on all your video on demand platforms. And Austen, where can people go to get more information about the doc?
So our website is naughtybooksdoc.com, and our Instagram is also naughtybooksdoc.com. Fun fact, you can't have naughty in the name of your Facebook URL, so at Facebook we are the Indie Romance Doc.
Are you serious?
Wow.
I am serious. They rejected it and said that I could not have the word naughty in there.
Wow, that's crazy. CJ, where can people find you online?
People can go to my website. It's aboutcjroberts.com, where you can find out about CJ Roberts.
That's great.
Thank you.
Naughty Books, the documentary, very eye-opening and also surprisingly inspiring. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for being on the Film Threat Podcast. And I also want to thank our sponsor, Storyblocks. Go to storyblocks.com/filmthreat. There's just great resources for independent filmmakers to make documentaries or whatever your creative project is. Thank you so much for doing the show. This was a blast.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.